Sarah, and I think we're good.
Sure. Basically.
Hi, Glenn.
It's very good.
We're gonna find a chair. We're gonna steal an audience chair for you, Glenn.
All right, folks, let's get started. Today is the August 7th, 2019 meeting of the Planning Board, and Rollinsford, what's the first item on the agenda?
Just the public hearing for the lower access sustainable development, major subdivision.
Okay. So why don't those folks come forward and begin their presentation?
Thank you. My name is Bob Stoll. I'm principal of Tri-State Insurance Dover. The applicant property owner, Mike Williams, here as well. This is Victoria Point project that we were in, I think it was April. We're talking on a conceptual basis when we came in at that point. We've worked out a lot of the details since we were here then. But this is an overview of where we're at. This is the old former Bennett property, now known as Victoria Point. This is the Victorian home, the residence there. This is a carriage house that is going to be renovated into a single-family dwelling. This is the large car barn that is going to be removed as part of the project. And then this shows kind of the placeholders on where houses would likely go around the site. Shows the expanse of the river frontage. We've got open space here, and in front here are our two open space areas to fill our open space requirement. We have on sheet S1, note 14, we go through our open space zoning requirements to show how we come up with our yield that we do. Starting off with total area, moving wetlands, steep slopes, and working our way down to a allowable number of lots of 7.1 lots, which rounds down to 7 lots as we proposed. The one lot being with the existing Victorian home, one that would contain the carriage house, and then five new building lots. As part of the package, you have sheet C1 that looks at the infrastructure that's required to do the project there. It's a short cul-de-sac of about 450 feet from start to end. As you go around, it turns out to be a little long, a little over 650 of total length. But it has a grassed island, and we have drainage infrastructure that handles the cul-de-sac runoff with a little bioretention area in the center of the cul-de-sac. We have another little bioretention area there that handles the runoff from the rest of the roadway. We are proposing to extend city water, municipal water, that would come from the main in Silver Street, come down and terminate in a hydrant. And we have services that are dedicated to each one of the homes, including replacing the existing service to the Victorian that would be replaced with a new service off of New Main. The utilities are proposed underground, where we have a riser pole, existing riser pole that we would use here out at Silver Street and come underground, and we would feed one transformer down here between lots 19.5 and 19.6. We've got another transformer here that would service these lots, and then a final transformer that feeds the existing home, got the underground electric and telephone, we've got the city water. We have proposed, when we talked this morning, we met with the technical review group, we talked some things through as far as we are proposing a street light at Silver Street where there's an existing pole. We would place a new head on that to provide a street light right at the entrance. And then down at the cul-de-sac by this cluster of driveways, we're also proposing a new street light down there that would be more of modern, Eversource calls it their town and country style. It's more of a lantern look to it, one of the standard residential areas as opposed to a telephone pole with big overhead lights on the top. And again, this morning in technical review, we talked about setting that outside the right of way so that could be owned and maintained by the association. So it would be the responsibility of the town. As well, we talked about the fact we've got the street trees here. We have 2 trees per lot that we've proposed in addition to the existing trees that are on site. We do this without all this infrastructure, without clearing the existing trees that are out there. But we are adding street trees along here. Again, this morning we talked about the fact those will be out of the right of way, so they'll be on private property, not the responsibility of the municipality. We talked about the bioretention areas and responsibility for maintenance on those. And again, that's something that the homeowners association would like to take care of and maintain the bioretention areas. They're fairly maintenance free, but they do need annual maintenance, and that would be part of the homeowners association to take care of those on an annual basis. And we would provide an additional easement to the town for this one here in case the town needed to get into doing work there. We would provide an easement for that. I think those are the main highlights of what we've been showing. Again, this is under the cluster regulations, the open space regulations, where we're able to maintain this expanse of river frontage in common ownership by the homeowners association that is protected from further development here. No more additional units going to be constructed out here, as well as this front piece out here that keeps the aesthetic appeal of the estate property and the view of the existing home. So that was our goal with the layout. Since we saw you, we've been to the zoning board on a couple of occasions to pin down one building envelope over here on lot 19-3 that we received the variance from the zoning board of adjustment to allow this envelope, this structure to be constructed 50 feet closer than the 250 that's required on the balance of the lots. So this lot here has a little enlarged envelope, so we're a little bit closer to the river on that. Like I said, we did meet with technical review this morning. I think most of the questions were ministerial in nature. We've got some drafting issues, some things that we should clear up with the review engineer. But I think all in all, we're on the right track with the layout here. And certainly happy to review that with you guys. I know Mr. Krebs has done his review and recommended that we're complete and ready for acceptance, and hoping that we're in a position that we can get that off the table and get some progress.
Okay, thank you. If any members ask questions, and I'm going to. What would your response to these questions?
Yes, but if you don't mind, I think it might be prudent to review some of the issues that the technical review committee raised. They're asking for some revisions, and since the public, it could weigh into the public's questions and comments, and also for this committee, this board to know too. I would actually recommend that this board not consider this application to complete until you've had a chance to read through both the covenant and the memorandum from the technical review committee and can digest that information. And Krebs has not had a chance to review this version of the proposal. This morning's meeting went really well. Starting with department heads, the highway department really appreciated the cul-de-sac design because it's easier to plow. They prefer for the center of cul-de-sacs to be paved, but allowing for drainage in the center is going to help with stormwater, and that's certainly a worthwhile part of the project. The center will drain through a drainage between lots 3 and 4, correct me if I'm wrong, which I might recommend that the planning board go out and do a site review before approval also, and see where the site walk, because it's gonna drain off into the neighbor's property to the left, which may require an easement, and so we may wanna have a look at that. The fire department was there to echo the need for a cul-de-sac, and they appreciated that, and that there will be a fire hydrant at the end of the cul-de-sac. They have concerns about water pressure because the hydrants on Silver Street don't have good pressure. And the water department was there to also state the benefit of having a fire hydrant at the end of the line. This will be the end of the service line, which will help water quality to be able to flush at the end of the line. There is an adjustment, I think, in the plan. It currently says a 6-inch main, which they recommended going up to an 8-inch main. So they'll work that out with the water sewer department. There was some discussion about whether or not it would be worthwhile to extend the sewer line from just before the American Legion all the way up the hill and around, which would negate the need to install septic fields. That's for the applicant to decide. It would reduce the minimum lot size, so if they chose to do that, there would be, a big capital expense, but they could get more lots out of it. So they may work that out and present a different proposal at another time that reflects that if they want to. The major concern of Jay Stevens, the engineer reviewing the proposal on behalf of the town, was that it's not clear from the plans where the septic designs fall in relation to the homes and in relation to the 250-foot setback to the river. The applicant agreed with the zoning board not to infringe upon that setback with the septic systems. Nowhere in the application are all those things in the same place. Further, in the application, the septic designs, where they're noted, seem to overlap where houses may go. There's a disagreement between the applicant and the town about whether or not the cluster subdivision regulations and the subdivision regulations would trump the zoning ordinance that requires the minimum lot size for septic systems, or whether the zoning ordinance would supersede the cluster subdivision regulations. So we're gonna do some investigation about that, which may require legal advice. And then the applicant was very gracious to move the street light that's within the near the cul-de-sac onto private property for their maintenance and expense. We appreciate that because the design is not always easy. We have a similar design on Stockdale and I think the Caras, and those parts aren't always easy to find. Trying to think what else. I don't know if you all remember any other comments.
I think that you've hit the three things that jumped out at me from the meeting were the water pressure issues or potential issues that the water department brought up, that they've asked us to do pressure tests out on Silver Street as well as fire flow tests to find out what they are. I don't know what they are, but they said that is at the outer limits of their system, and they would like some tests on that. So that's on our list to take care of. It is the water pressure test as well as the water fire flow test. Again, couple issues that I guess we really weren't on the same page with the review from Mr. Stevens. One related to lot sizing, and when I did my review of the ordinance, that the cluster regulations within the zoning are pretty specific about how to deal with the lot sizing. We have under the cluster sections 8-7, where we talk about lot configuration, size, and setbacks. And that appears to kick the lot sizing requirement to meet the state sizing, the state regulations for the density on the property. Mr. Stevens had a different approaching it from the subdivision regulations and where, again, I'm sure you're familiar with the minimum lot sizing by soil type in your subdivision regulations. And that wasn't the approach we took, but since the meeting we had this morning, I had the opportunity to look at that. Again, we had just gone on the basis of the zoning ordinance was in charge, but for sake of discussion I was surprised that the ordinance specifically addresses how to deal with a cluster subdivision. And so I have looked at that, and we do meet the lot sizing requirements under the subdivision regulations as well.
So I think you were gonna get Mr. Clark and Mr. Stevens and myself that regulation, and we'll start a discussion and
Exactly.
make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah. So that was, the numbers in the table here address individual lot sizing, but under 11.1.4B, it says in the case of cluster subdivisions, and it describes how to approach it. And we've gone through that and feel comfortable that we're there, so we can certainly get the specifics to you on that.
But then there's the concern of the septics overlapping with the home footprints as well.
Yeah, and that was the third issue that was on my radar screen, and I was a little confused from the standpoint that is the area that we've shown on our plans on the S2 in particular, show a 4,000 square foot suitable area, which is a state requirement. And the state does not regulate that the house can't be within that. Under the subdivision regulations, you have very specific requirements on what you require under 10.11, non-sewer area system siting requirements, which doesn't require a 4,000 square foot area, but tells you how to ensure that you do have those areas. So again, Mr. Stevens specifically said in his cover letter to Mr. Hinsman, we did not perform a detailed review of the septic system information, as that will be addressed by the NHDES Subsurface Systems Bureau. So he immediately then got into a discussion about Subsurface Systems Bureau. So I think if we stick to the state review and the state information, and the town review and the town information, we can get through this a lot better.
Possibly. Nonetheless, I'm gonna recommend that we not find it complete until the town and the applicant are on the same page.
Okay.
I think I'd like to get input from, obviously, perhaps also legal concerning lot size and interpretation, which trumps the other as far as regulations, because it's a viewpoint and interpretation, so I think legal,
It may come
I
to that,
feel comfortable
yeah.
having legal for.
And again, if that's the route we need to, my recent investigation would say that there isn't conflict, that we apply both interpretations, we comply with both interpretations. Again, for example, what we did here, I had a chance this afternoon to show, again, how these lots would be built. The state requires a 4,000 square foot area that's suitable. These are, for this type of soil, based on this test pit here, that you need approximately a system that's 280 square feet. That's what you need for a septic system. That 4,000 square feet isn't supposed to be designated for a septic system. It's an area on the lot that you've got a shot at doing a septic system. This is what we submit when we actually go to get a septic system approved, that shows the same house that we show on the other plans, but shows the actual footprint of the septic system, and shows that there's plenty of room on the lot to achieve a septic system, a house, a driveway, 3 cars in the driveway, et cetera, et cetera. But again, this was just, I think that got blown out of proportion today as far as how to achieve, how to get these septic systems on each of the lot. As well, we talked about the driveways needed to keep building setbacks. That wasn't something I was aware of, but as you can see, just by pushing things around a few feet here or there, again, it's not an unsurmountable task to get the driveways to meet building setbacks. So this is more what you would see when you go for a septic design versus a subdivision approval.
All right, does anyone, why is Mr. Prince here?
Because it was kind of already presented that this board wouldn't take any substantive action before hearing the report of the technical review committee, and
Okay.
since he will do his separate review and participated in that meeting,
Okay. I'm just curious.
yeah.
All right. Does anyone on the board have any questions for the applicant? Would any members of the public like to ask any questions?
I would.
If you please state your name and address for our,
My name is Regina Simmons. I live at 985 Portland Ave in Homestead. And with all due respect to the presenters of these 9 homes, I'm thinking that there's going to be 9 new families, but what about the people who already live there? That is a very small road leading to that subdivision. Those people have lived there for years. It is going to be a nightmare to the community, an absolute nightmare. In construction and after construction, the traffic leading into that area is really going to impact the community. I don't think it's fair. Just because someone wants to put up a subdivision, their rights come before ours? I don't get it. Don't we have a say?
thank you. Anybody else? Please state your name and your,
Yeah, 2653 Silver Street. We live on the dead end. The home I live in, I've lived there since I was married 46 years ago. My husband's lived there all his life and his mother before him for all but the first 5 years of her life. We, neighbors have all agreed that this is a good thing compared to what's been there. It's an improvement of the property. Somebody could have come in, I know somebody wanted to turn it into a wedding venue. Another person wanted to put a ton of condos down there. And it's not 9 houses, it's 7, because the other 2 lots are to be kept as open land. We realize it's gonna be an inconvenience for a while it's being built, but we think it will be an improvement. So we've got 3 of us here right now that we've all agreed that we'd like to see this happen, and we've talked to many of the other neighbors, and we haven't heard anyone that's been against it, so.
I'm surprised. I was speaking to you.
I appreciate it.
Seriously impacted.
Eventually, that property is gonna be developed, and it could be in a lot worse situation. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I was being your champion and I didn't need to be.
No, but 7 private homes is a lot better than, 12 condos or 20
Well, I
units or
didn't think that
something.
we would approve of 12 condos either.
They're the bosses, they
Why do we have
approve
to
it,
approve of anything?
but just so you know that most of the abutters are in favor of this.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected.
anyone else from the public that can comment? Yes, Sonny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sonny Forest, Wells Road. I'm going to try to explain this as nice as I can. This will be the 4th major project in this town. The last 3, in my viewpoint, have all left potential serious safety issues. And I'll start with Wentworth Street. Anybody that's been over to that Wentworth Street will tell you it's a horrible design. When you go downhill and go against 2 bulkheads in the road and have to turn around in somebody's driveway is poor. This past winter, when we had a deliberative session in town, I asked the select board, how did this ever get through the planning board? The answer was, I don't know. Very unacceptable answer, in my point. Right? But yet we had to vote on it, or we were going to go to court. So I just caution you guys. The second one, the development up in Clement Road, 300 foot of site, to date, that has never been publicly told to anybody how they come up with that. And I've asked that question to more than one person. Still unacceptable. The next one, Bluens project, Railroad Avenue, the parking lot back there. You're gonna put a number of cars down that road that hasn't been seen in years. And on that road, we have a person that lives there, that lives in a wheelchair. No consideration given to the residents. If you guys got problems and questions, don't be afraid to bring in outside engineering help. That's what they needed, and I think they really lacked on some of these decisions in the past. Now this going forward, this short section of Silver Street down there is narrow, and it's not built very heavy, and now you're gonna quadruple the traffic. You may wanna consider taking that into part of the requirements of this development. And that's what we really lack. We've given the farm away, in my opinion, in this town, and got nothing for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Tom Ellis, 652 Silver Street. You don't know how much traffic there was when Dr. Bennett owned that place down there. It was cars, trucks, constantly coming in and out. Nighttime, daytime, he had his junk delivered at night so nobody would see it. So I don't think Seven House is gonna add any more traffic than there used to be with Dr. Bennett down there. He had 53-foot trucks backing down the road. You know, I don't know if everybody saw it, but we saw it. So I don't think Seven House is gonna be any more traffic than there used to be with all his dealings he had going on.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just want to make a comment, because I think there's a problem with public perception when it comes to planning and development in town. I think a lot of people would love to see nothing further ever get developed in Rollinsford, and lots of us live here because we love the rural character of this place and we want to maintain that. And that's reflected in the master plan, and that's why we have a master plan. However, this body has to weigh that against also a property owner's statutory right to maximize the potential of their property within our regulations. So we allow subdivisions because we have to allow subdivisions, because property owners get to maximize the value. So if you can fit a subdivision, you get to do that. The role of the planning board is to make sure that it fits the regulations and to hear from the public. So whenever these things happen, we put it in the paper and we notify the abutters and we let the public know because we want to hear from you. But what we need to hear from the people are traffic concerns, safety concerns, aesthetic concerns, things that might impact property valuations or your water pressure next door or some other kind of impactful things like that. But in the end, you can't just say no to a subdivision because you'd rather not see a property developed. So sometimes that gets confusing for people because they like things the way they are, and change is hard.
Thank you very much.
Can I add something else?
Yes, sir, please.
Since I live right there, looking at that barn is an eyesore. I don't know how Dr. Bennett ever got permits to put all that up there, but I'd rather see the barn gone and a few nice looking houses there. And it's not, we live right there, so it's gonna be open space next to our house. I mean, it could have probably been 2-3 more houses put in that open spot where they're gonna have the open land. It could have been 3-4 more houses, I bet you, to squeeze it in. I'd rather look out my side window and see an open spot and look out my back door and see the barn gone and a nice house. You know, if you know, it's been a circus,
Thank you very much.
you know.
All right, so I believe that's the issue with the, whether or not we find the application application.
We have to suspend the hearing, no, you're gonna suspend it.
Okay. That's what I was asking.
Rather than closing it, yeah.
Right, okay.
I'll make a motion.
All right, anyone second? All right, all in favor say, all in favor of suspending the hearing until
The next planning board meeting, which we haven't set yet.
the next planning board meeting, which we haven't set yet, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the ayes have it.
Suspend that 7.
Okay. That's, good for that. All right, so, Mr. Brigham and Mr., I know you're very anxious to move forward. I know your plan's been thoughtful, but there are some issues here we need to look into, and we'll see you at the next planning board meeting.
So we work behind the scenes a little bit to try to get clarification on the issues that are at hand, and then resume hopefully at the next meeting. Is that?
You have my email address, and feel free to touch base with me,
I have it.
and I will certainly likewise do the same.
Just so I know exactly what to do, I don't want to stumble.
Come to next planning board meeting.
We will be here.
So is there a deadline that we need to have the issue resolved beforehand, or new materials to you, or?
I think, I think the big consideration with that regard is how much time Mr. Krebs would need to, and also Mr. Stevens to review revisions. Open to suggestions, maybe every other 20 days, I don't
I
know.
have that clarification on the lot minimum on the lot size as well.
Well, that's kind of like what we're trying to, I think he's gonna need that information ahead of time to,
Mr. Stevens, can I make a determination on that?
he and Mr. Clark and I are gonna see, we're gonna read through regulations and read what he is going to send over to us about what he thinks applies, and we'll review that, and if it comes to legal, then we'll get a legal opinion about it, and,
But it may not
That
need to go to
will play
legal
into
if it can be
potential
resolved in-house. I mean, I'm not addressed to that, and I would like to voice that. I'm very appreciative of your working with the town, and also change is inevitable. Change has to happen, and we appreciate that you're also keeping the town's interest in mind with the open space. We've heard from your abutters. And we needn't mention previous history of the property, because there's been activity there, and obviously, as was stated earlier, there could have been a lot more development on this piece of land,
We're trying to do the right thing. I think these.
That's
items-
appreciated.
I think when you see the whole case, it'll be clear, and you won't need to bring an attorney in, but I think Jay missed something. He's more Maine than New Hampshire, and I think it'll be easier to clarify than it could be. Yeah, I'm pretty confident in that. Having seen what he did this afternoon for research, it's pretty clear.
So we have to get that stuff to you quickly, so that we can keep that moving. The water line, water hydrant testing, we do really want to get that set up, and certainly, by the next meeting, we should have that data.
I'm working with, what was his name, Ray, from the water department. I've already had a long discussion with him. He showed me where the sewer ends. I think it's, and we talked about booster pumps to get pressure off the different avenues, and that's resolvable. And I think when the reading is all done, this will be resolved. So I don't think there's any major showstopper. It's just another delay. But we
it's a process.
but it's enough missing where you can't accept jurisdiction of the plan, basically, is what they're saying, because of the water pressure or the.
To my mind, the whole situation about septic and lot size
So Jay.
it could be a substantial revision. So, we gotta resolve that one way or the other to know what version of the plan would be approved, I think is the big sticking point.
I think, yeah, Jay misspoke, I think you'll see that, so that'll be.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we appreciate everyone's comments from we're your neighbors too. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Hi.
Zoning improvement for 50 feet off the river?
I
don't know how much is that? Because last I knew, that was federally required.
No, for the May meeting.
How much they cut it back to?
200 feet
instead of
250. So they're 200 feet off the river instead of 250 feet.
See, I was told, that's the first time that's been broken.
I was told in Rochester that it's a federal law, that it's
The
250.
state.
Yeah, it was for the May meeting.
And no town dropped it, that's why I was denied in Rochester.
I know it's amazing.
Well, that's the case then, that's it. I don't know how they could try to.
I wanted to put a shed up,
So,
a shed.
we're just at the
Oh, Glenn Chase, Richard Fogarty, sorry.
So Glenn is an alternate.
And he's been an alternate for a very long time.
Richard Focus. Oh, okay, Richard Focus. And I'm Wendy's, and Wendy said the second one.
Is there a plan through Wendy?
Yeah.
Okay, so I apologize for that. Is everybody acquainted now? Okay, so I'm.
Correspondence.
No, but we approving minutes.
No, I'm seconding the motion that we approve the minutes of the
Who's
meeting.
firsting
I
it?
may.
I think Glenn did. Oh, no,
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Kevin did.
So,
Okay.
all in favor of approving the May minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Any correspondence?
There is one piece of correspondence, actually.
I gave away my subdivision, or my plan. Did you have it online?
Yeah, I can send you the files.
Would you? I'll be
What
addressed.
do you need?
Well, I mean, the
Do you want
regulations.
zoning,
Yeah, just our
site?
up-to-date regulations, because the
Yeah.
last ones I got were,
Yep.
I gave away.
Who approved 50-foot change? The
So,
CBA? What?
there's no action to be taken from this correspondence, but this is from the Department of Transportation.
Was it
It's a
5
dredge and
vote?
fill application from their wetlands program manager at the Wetlands Bureau of the Department of Education. They're notifying the town and the planning board and other parts of the town about, this is a dredge and fill application, and basically it's notice of the property on the corner of General Sullivan Way and Portland Avenue. They have a shallowly buried, essentially piece of metal, but it's a communication device for Skyhaven Airport. And it needs to get replaced, and so they have an easement, and they're gonna access that from General Sullivan Way, and they've been in contact with the property owner, and they're gonna, at some point soon, dig that up and replace it. So they're notifying us of that. I have the full application. Anyone who wants to take it home and read it is welcome to. I also have it electronically, and I will forward it to you. That might be easier to read. As I said, there's no action to be
They have an
taken.
easement to access this?
They do.
Okay. And there's, as far as input from the buyers or the property owners around, doesn't really matter because it's an easement.
It's an easement.
It's an easement.
Doesn't matter, so, okay.
I'm just trying to follow, what is the airport in Rochester have to do with it?
It's some kind of beacon or radio device that helps them, helps the instrument panels locate where they are.
Oh,
You know,
okay. I just-
When you're flying around, it's hard to know when you're seeing just big sky where you are in relationship to the ground, and that thing's supposed to help with that. And that's about all I know.
How did that in the first place?
Perhaps when the airport came to be.
Yeah, in the flight
You know.
path of,
Yeah,
not P's and somewhere that was okayed by the FAA for them to use.
yeah. Yeah,
We need to know.
right. Yeah. So I will forward you the email, and if any of you have any questions, you'll see in the email the contact for the project, and feel free to reach out, and if you wouldn't mind sharing whatever you learned from that, if you're so inclined, if not learned something.
So it's just isn't needed anymore.
No, they need it. They have to replace it because, you know, I think it's just aged out or deteriorated or what have you.
So is the next on the agenda setting the
Yes.
date of that planning
Yes,
board meeting?
so the next scheduled date is the day right after Labor Day, so we just need to decide whether,
So what
That
are
feels a
folks'
little
preference?
tight.
Would you rather meet after Labor, the Tuesday after Labor Day, or push it back a week? What would people like to do?
There's that applicant, I appreciate the extra week on.
I was just thinking that too, as I said that.
And I was gonna say, with the next meeting, I think you're probably gonna have more of the locals in my neighborhood. I mean, we had the folks that live right next door, but we didn't have a lot of the folks that lived the 4, 5, 6 houses around. And I think you're gonna see that next time. If there's a possibility that the plan will be more complete.
So we would be talking the 10th.
Second Tuesday.
is that,
That's fine with me.
someone wants to make a motion?
Ken and Richard, does that work for you?
It works.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to move the next planning board meeting to the 10th.
Second. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So I think that's, so motion, nothing else on the agenda, right? All right, and so we did have 2 months off. I think we're going to earn our 2 months off from this project, maybe pretty shortly. So I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Unless you want to hear public comment.
I'm sorry?
That's okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have a rebuttal to what you said about change. And I got no problem with change. But those 3 issues that I gave you are serious safety issues. I really think you need to go to that road because you're not going to get an ambulance by an oil truck or a propane truck in the event that it's needed. That the road is narrow. So when I asked the question, how did it ever get through the board? I didn't appreciate the answer. I don't know. There had to have been somebody that was there, and the only person that was there in all 3 of these projects I named is Krebs. I realize, you people aren't the Newton residents like me. You don't hold engineering degrees. You know, if it don't make sense, bring in outside help. That's what you're there for. It makes your decision easier. Would you agree with that, Mr. Chairman?
You know, something else that I had a concern about the Plymouth property, the sightline, and the sightline in our regulations said that it was there. I mean, so,
Nobody said how it was conducted. And that's what I was trying to find out. So if you're talking about the one in Clement, correct?
right.
All right, so that road comes out to the side of Clement. Even if you stood right at the edge of the pavement, in which you'll never see a set of eyes, you're gonna be back at least, what, 6, 8 feet from the side of the road, if you're coming to the stop sign? You should have clear line of sight, left and right, 300 feet. Superman maybe, but not any of us here.
That was a major issue of concern at that project.
But it was never explained. I even asked the question, how was it conducted? It's all done. That's all I kept getting.
I think they
But there
had
was input and
surveyors.
review on that, there was input and review on that, because that was a bone of contention, and it was addressed, because until it was addressed, it was an obstacle that would absolutely stop the project. So I can't cite specifically how that was determined.
But see, it was done by some outside concern, but nobody ever sat down and said, this is how it actually went down. So, I mean, I look at it objectively, 300 feet, you'd be really pressed to do 100.
So, Sonny, I hear you, and I absolutely agree with you that all these concerns are valid concerns and things that we need to hear and consider. And we do have Jay Stevens, an engineer, qualified civil engineer, to review these projects at the applicant's expense for exactly these reasons. And we have technical review committee now, which I'm not sure was in place at that time, so that all department heads and the engineer and Tom Clark can all sit down with Mr. Krebs together, and we can have these conversations and work these things out and ask those questions. So You
But
know,
if
part of
nobody
my
brings it
response
up.
to you is we're getting better. We're learning and getting better.
Well, I brought them 3 up just as a highlight, because I'm seeing some faces here that I haven't seen before. No disrespect, but like I said, you know, you're residents like me, you're human beings. I don't know, maybe you guys are all engineers from some,
Human being. But we do have due diligence and we ask the people that are qualified. When someone makes, or performs a duty for us that, you know, because they're an expert in the field, and they're putting their name and their license behind that. Me as a property owner, and I look at that, and this is the man that should know this, and he's willing to put his name on it, and he reviewed a certain aspect of a development that we specifically said, does this fit? Gave him all of our paperwork, and the man comes back and he says it fits. I accept that. If it's a obstacle that must be addressed, and it gets addressed, and we move past it.
wouldn't you ask, okay, why does it fit? I mean, maybe I'm just more curious than what you might be, but just because he says it's okay, why is it okay?
Because it's not my background, and I appreciate your points too. Safety obviously being a concern. But he may explain to me, and I'm not even qualified to judge, as it's not my field of expertise.
Well, but he could
My
explain
knowledge
to you
means
why
nothing.
he at least thinks it's okay. And that's what, you know, on that line of sight issue, that's never been done. All I heard all the time was, it's done, it's okay, it's good.
Yeah.
You know, and I found that to be totally unacceptable as a resident of this community.
I think that might be a symptom also of this board not being the right kind of, having the right kind of expertise to say exactly what was done, except to say that an expert certified that it qualified. And so that there's no way to, you know, remember and then understand their process and know, except to say that,
I would have put that onus onto the applicant, because he had his engineer all the time here, and he wouldn't even step up. He'd clam right up. So, I mean, all that doing was just infuriating me even more. I want an answer. It's that simple. Explain it.
I wish we had more people like yourselves come to these public meetings. We have these public hearings for this purpose. I'm just a home property owner like you are in town, and I want the best for town, but we
And I'll
appreciate input from
I'll
the
give you a
public.
prime example. I was sitting in this room when C&J was getting their okay to put up their third building. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. They spent more time talking on what type and where the trees were gonna go. You know, I mean, they were really picky, the planning board. I mean, right down to the tree. And then I look at these other 3 projects and want to say, geez, what did they do, get approved at the local gin mill? And I'm not saying it to be sarcastic, but you need to view it from my point. It's horrible improvement. And I think that road's gonna come back to get us. Well, the reason I say that is it's gonna get pushed. Either the snow's gonna narrow it up, and we, as taxpayers here in town, are gonna be forced to widen the road. When in fact, oh, you guys are gonna say no. Make the road to the right width. It's not up to you to design it.
we can only do what the regulations say we can do. So the road regulations or whatever they are in our regulations, if it, you know, 20 feet qualifies, we can't say,
20 feet might be great, but what about the downgrade? That's what.
I don't disagree, but, you know, that's working on regulations. So we can't hold them to something that's not in the regs.
I don't think that's in the regs. I mean, that's just a plain outright safety issue.
You can't extenuate circumstances.
I really would invite you all to take a look at that road to see how, you know, I spoke to a couple of residents over there that I bumped into, and they said the road is really narrow and horrible. We love living over there. So, I mean,
Are you talking about Silver Street, the dead end? What do you?
no, I'm talking about Wentworth.
Yeah.
You know, that road should have been probably moved in a different location, and, you know, there again, that's up to an engineer to figure it out.
Just keep talking to us.
Why? I'm not an engineer.
No, but you know, you keep us grounded and you'll keep, you know, helping us ask the right questions.
We're all in this together.
You really gotta take a hard look at the end of Silver Street, though. I mean, I don't think the base of the road is gonna take the heavy pounding that's going to be done when the equipment starts rolling in and out of there.
probably, because we're finding that most of our roads don't have the base that they should have.
But if it fits regulations, we cannot deny if it fits regulations on personal preference or opinion.
And we
There
can't hold
again.
up their construction because our road isn't up to some standard, you know?
Well, there again, lay it right into them. Say, hey, if you damage the road, you're gonna be responsible to repair it. I mean, it's like in the spring. If you've got a heavy truck going across the road when the frost is coming out, without their approval, and you damage it, you're gonna have to go back and fix
we
it.
have done that. I
Yeah,
want you to know, we have done that. It happens, you're right, it happens. And when we notice and people bring it to our attention, we do something about that. So keep talking to us.
I just have a question. You keep talking about regulations. Are they the town's regulations or are they the state's regulations?
We have to follow all the regulations.
No, but I'm saying that you're going according to the regulations. Which regulations are we discussing?
Mostly at hand are the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations,
Which are in place in the
which are
town?
Wallingford documents.
Okay.
Is it not that we can't overstep the state regulations? We can make them harder, but we can't make them easier.
Correct.
Is that the way that it works?
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
And so, when you all have recommendations and think that our regulations aren't what they maybe should be or could be to fit the best interest of the town, the subdivision and site review documents can be revised by the planning board. The zoning ordinance is a one shot per year on the ballot revision. So, you know, that's a slower process and you know, but it all takes work on
And
this
to be
board.
honest, when it's on that piece of paper, not enough people know what that what you're changing, enough to make a decision that really, whether it should or shouldn't.
So we have public hearings before it's on the ballot, because we're required to, and so it points again to the need to have people to come and learn about what's going on and engage and ask us questions. and tell us how they feel about things.
Exactly. You know, it comes down to more people need to be informed. Make an informed decision, and if they can't bother to come to a public hearing for an informed decision, then don't sit back and be a chair quarterback and say, this is the way it should have been.
one thing you guys do though, that your hands are tied, I've been told, is when you make a zoning ordinance change and it goes to the public for the ballot, you're only allowed to put just so much explanation. That is wrong. I mean, now, I know what you're gonna say, but I don't know why you couldn't have a secondary flyer to fully explain it in normal terms.
We're actually required to have, at the deliberative session and on election day, the full text of the revision.
Yeah.
So just know that, like, you know,
Yes.
you can't, you know, the cost and space of putting a big revision just isn't practical. So a summary of what the change is and what, pointing to regulation 8.2.10
Sure.
or what have you, is the best that we can do. But rest assured that the full change is always available in paper form at the public hearing ahead of time, deliberative session, and at the ballot.
But nobody looks at it.
Explain it. Sometimes just a
Exactly.
simple layman's explanation does a world of good, because some people have voted for stuff and they actually admitted after they found out, I went the wrong way.
Well, right, and point taken, which is why I'm really trying to work with the select board to improve, like to continue the voter guide and improve it and get it, you know, that it really is the point of the voter guide, so that everything on the ballot is in layman's terms for the people, so that they understand what the implications are, what the consequences of voting or not voting for it might be. Absolutely, you know, we know that it's not really layman's English, but, you know, so public hearings, voter guide.
I think you got an opportunity in front of you to make something nice, but you don't need to give a farm away just because certain things don't meet the criteria and say, oh, waive it. And that was a great thing that I thought that the previous planning boards did. Oh, we can waive this and we can waive that. Wrong.
So just so you know, what came from the zoning board, they had to come back to, you know, to make a second presentation to make changes, so I know that the zoning board took a hard look at it, and I'm sure this board took a hard look at it too. This is
Well, I'm
one
sure.
fresh minds we have on the board.
Well, you and I went at it. I mean, in a nice way. But we were in disagreement on a lot of things. How's that?
Yeah, sure.
The zoning board did go around and around and around about it because they didn't want to set the precedent
That's
of
been said.
allowing one lot to go to the 200 feet when everything else was it says 250.
That's the first time that's happened. It goes way back in time to when Fred Berry wanted to build on the side of, you remember that? Yeah. No, they wouldn't let them encroach. Yeah, and we're talking going back many years. That was back in the what? Early,
25 years, 25, 30 years ago.
what was more than that?
He wanted to put in a shared housing thing.
Yeah, well.
He didn't want to call it a nursing
All right.
home.
They would like to go.
All right, I'll entertain a motion again to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
A second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah. Got it. I'll let you know if I need anything else.
Okay. Yeah, and I put in everything, the addendum
Nobody can-
and all that.
Yeah.
Well, that 250, can't be overridden then. Is that state and federal?
I'd have to find out. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Just don't think that's gonna be the final comment.
Oh, I know.